Everything is recorded.
It's the government. It probably has to go through 25 people before you're allowed to spend a dollar, right?
So my point is, so then the question is, well, then why are they doing this? I think here's my interpretation.
Okay.
The numbers they know are going to be explosive, and I mean explosive in the court of public opinion.
Okay.
They're going to be gargantuan, and they know they're going to be attacked. They're going to be attacked by fiscal conservatives, by think tanks, by the opposition members, and that's the first point.
There might even be people who are saying you're not spending enough money.
I'm not so sure. I think those numbers are going to be bigger than that people realize. So that's the first point. The second point is they've already made commitments. We know that to some very, very big ticket items.
Yeah.
National daycare, whether it's national pharmacare, a lot more money to health care. I mean, this list goes on. And this is above and beyond the last stated deficit, which was in the 370 billion range. And all one has to do is look at the throne speech. If anyone thinks that I'm unfairly characterized, that's last fall. And there were big ticket items in there that were just unbelievable. Then you turn to the Finance Committee's budget recommendation. I've lost track of the number of proposals, but it's in the multi billions. Okay, they're not going to adopt them all. But here's where I'm going. I think that the government wants more time so they can decide upon, because they're still probably debating it behind closed doors, which ones are we going to go with? Because they're not going to go with them all. I'm not suggesting that. They can't go with universal basic income and full pharmacare and full daycare and. So they're going to, or whatever, big ticket, and they're going to, I believe, announce them before the budget, and then have a debate. People can debate and write op-eds about it and so forth, so that when they get to the budget, when they finally do have a budget, those proposals that they will have announced and committed to will become part of the, quote, base expenditure. In other words, it's no longer debatable because, well, that's just the past spending.
We're already committed to it. We already told you we're committed to it. We're committed to it.
Yeah. By the way, you knew it was coming, and so don't get your knickers in a knot.
Right.
Then the budget becomes that is presented as the budget proposal for spending in the future. It becomes a fait accompli budget. That is to say, they present it to Parliament and the Can people, and they say, well, look, the money's already gone out the door, people. Like, what do you want me to do? I mean, the money's been spent. So sorry. It's almost going to be almost like an audit. An audit looks at the past, not the future. That's why you cannot audit the future, as I argued to the City of Ottawa during the Lansdowne Park debate when the Auditor General said he'd audited the 35-year future forecast, and I said you can't audit the future because the future hasn't arrived. Audits audit the past. So they're going to present a budget, which is a future-oriented document, by the way. That's what budgets are.
Sure. Yeah.
So they're going to do through a sleight of the hand, almost like a card magician, a magician doing a trick. They're going to present this as a budget, but it's really going to be a fait accompli, almost like an audit, where they're going to say, well, this is what we've done. This is what we've spent. It's gone out the door, people. This isn't a future, maybe we would like to do this one day. Yeah. This will be a record of what they have done.
Yeah.
And so I think they're postponing the budget date to give them the time to make those commitments on those one or two or three very large ticket, and whether it's pharmacare, we don't yet know. Whether it's daycare, I think it will be. Whether it's going to be some aspect of guaranteed annual income, we don't yet know. But they're going to, I think, use this time and I wouldn't even be surprised if they present the budget. Mark my words. Watch this. Present it, June the 30th. Or something, well into the summer when, guess what? Yeah. We're not looking.
Yeah, nobody.
What are we doing in the summer? We're grateful that the summer's finally here after a long, arduous winter.
Yeah.
Most will be vaccinated by then, and we're not going to be focused on
what do you think of this line is, well, we're still kind of in, I guess I would call it the fog of war, and we don't want to make decisions while things are so murky right now. I say that's complete nonsense.
I'd say focus.
I agree with you.
That's right. To say that they don't know what they've spent is just simply fraudulent.
Right.
Okay, anyone who's familiar with Government of Canada and government more generally, and I'm talking Western government,
or not even what they've spent, but what they plan to spend. I mean, they must have some idea.
Of course,
about what the revenues are going to be and what the expenditures are going to be, which is what the budget is, right? And and then it's just a matter of, okay, what are the priorities of your particular government,
right?
And and I'm sorry, Professor, but and then they'll have to rely on a series of assumptions. This is what we think the inflation rate will be, and this is what we think the prime rate at the bank will be, and sure, and they do that in consultation with the leading private sector economists who are all out there every day with their forecasts about this, that, and the other thing, right?
The idea that there's two parts to this. The idea that they don't know exactly what they spent so far is really a cheap shot, I think, against public servants, saying that they're so incompetent and they lack the wherewithal. And by the way, that is simply false. The accounting systems in the Government of Canada are excellent. The finance-trained people, the finance people, and the accounting people are top-notch. They have top-notch recording systems. And the idea that they're just sitting there gobsmacked and they have no idea how much money's gone out the door is just, it's a cheap shot against the public servants, a coded cheap shot. And secondly, it's dishonest. It's not true. Simply not true. They know exactly how much is going out the door. And they know how much has gone out in each department, in each program, because they keep excellent records. Otherwise, you couldn't do the budget at any point in time.
Sure.
In terms of future spending, they know what they've announced so far. It's on the record. And the only thing that's up in the air, as I've said, are any big-ticket expenditures that they have not yet decided upon. And I'm willing to acknowledge that they have not yet decided, are we going to go with a universal pharmacare so we can give free drugs to our supporters, high-income progressives living in the most wealthy postal codes of Canada, and give them free drugs? And I'm talking professors and public servants. In other words, the people in the top 2 quintiles. Are we going to give universal free daycare to everybody, including, high-income people making, like a doctor making $500,000?
Right.
I think these debates are going on right now. Are we going to go targeted versus universal, and which ones are we going to do? And so those are such big-ticket items that, of course, that will skew the spending going forward, depending whether you go universal or targeted social program sort of thing. So I think that the postponement is simply to buy time to make the decision, announce it, get it out the door, so it becomes a fait accompli, so that the budget is no longer a, quote, it's really a record of everything that's been committed to in the last 2 years. And
plus, when it comes to the Trudeau Liberals, budgets are not merely charts and graphs and spreadsheets and revenue statements and expenditure statements and forecasts for shortfalls and surpluses. They're aspirational documents.
They're very political documents.
Yeah, very political, right? Yeah.
I tell my students.
So they've got to hit the right kind of political message as well. So.
And here's a tip for everybody out there in radio land, and I tell this to my own students. The budget is literally runs 500 and 600 pages now, and 80% is words and paragraphs, and that's what I call the political propaganda and spin. Mm-hmm. And they have all these stories and how wonderful they are and how they jump over tall buildings in a single bound, and then the most miraculous and astonishing group of people that have ever walked the planet Earth. So propaganda in all the sentences and all the chapters go straight to the appendices where they actually have the data, the numbers. They have the forecast inflation year by year going out 5 years or 6 years. They have the budget deficit going out 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. The juice, the truth, the factual stuff, the stuff you can rely upon is in the appendices. And all the propaganda and all the spin is in the paragraphs and sentences and chapters that are called chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just jump past that. Save yourself hours of indigestion and go straight to the data in the appendices, and that's where you find out what's really going on.
Yeah, well put. Okay, look, we'll stop here, and when we come back, I want to talk to you about Line 5, the pipeline, okay? Ian Lee is here, professor, Sprott School of Business at Carleton University on City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. Yes, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, it's got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, where I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home for those, not me, anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries. Started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting. And anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not. But more so now, because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you situations and their circumstances change.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Aaron O'Toole is the leader of the Conservative Party. He's doing a news conference right now. Mr. Trudeau's doing his thing at 11:30 this morning. 4 questions in. 3 questions have been about abortion, and 1 has been about the Canadian military. Apparently, when it comes to questions for the leader of the opposition, nobody cares what he thinks about the pandemic or vaccines. At least not in the media, anyway. You're doing a heck of a job. Professor Ian Lee is with us. Good morning once again. So, line 5 could, which is not to say it will, but by, I think it's May 11th, as soon as May 11th, it could close, meaning no jet fuel for Pearson Airport. The gasoline supplies for Quebec and Ontario cut in half. It's really a remarkable position for a country with so much energy abundance to find itself in my opinion. Professor, what do you think?
Let me just put some facts on the table first. Line 5 was built in 1953. That's 68 years ago. To serve Michigan, the U.S. Midwest, Ontario, Southern Ontario, and Quebec. So it's been running, Line 5's been running since then. I went to the U.S. pipeline regulator called PHMSA, Pipeline Safety Hazardous Materials Administration, and they've been regulating pipelines for 50-odd years. There are 2.8 million miles, not kilometers, of pipeline crisscrossing the United States, carrying oil and oil and natural gas in different pipes, obviously. Canada, by the way, I went to the Natural Resources Canada and the Canada Energy Regulator. We're about kilometers of pipelines in our country. Both regulators claim it is the safest way to transport. These are the regulators. The regulators, not the oil companies, not the gas companies, state that oil and gas, the safest way to ship and transmit oil or natural gas is by pipeline. And now, under extraordinary pressure from environmental groups, the governor of Michigan is trying to abrogate the pipeline that cuts across a small part of Michigan. This is going to cause enormous harm to ordinary Canadians who heat their homes in southern Ontario in the winter and in Quebec. And just to remind everybody, as I do all the time, natural gas is used to heat homes and offices and hospitals and public schools and high schools and college classrooms and universities across this country and in the States. So if this closes down, this is going to significantly hurt and harm ordinary people. Now, I thought that progressives and environmentalists have been arguing for as long as I can remember that they believe in social justice. Well, hurting ordinary people who heat their homes and we heat classrooms and hospitals, hurting ordinary people is not social injustice. This is not social justice, it's social injustice. I mean, let me be more blunt so nobody misunderstands me. I think that this is despicably immoral, what she is doing.
Immoral.
And it is offensive and outrageous that it's even being discussed, shutting down this line that will cause serious harm to millions of ordinary people. And we don't hear a peep from the Green Party. We don't hear a peep from the NDP, and it's not being discussed in the House of Commons. They're discussing absolutely inane issues such as abortion, and it's inane because it's already been ruled upon by the Supreme Court of Canada. It's the law of the land. So we're not having a, quote, debate about it. It's the law of the land, period.
Well, I mean, I just for accuracy's sake, because, when it comes to that particular social issue, the issue is there's no law. The last law on abortion was struck down as unconstitutional, and Parliament was given a year to come up with a new law, and never did.
De facto, right, it's understood
right, yeah.
is.
I mean, you can say the issue is settled. The issue is settled, but
and it's settled by the Supreme Court of Canada.
Yeah.
And so the Liberals posturing in the House of Commons to try to embarrass the Conservatives, which is what they're trying to do. This is truly. Rome is burning. Mm-hmm. In this instance, Michigan is trying to shut a line that's going to cause enormous harm, personal harm to individual Canadians and sick people in hospitals, kids in school, and the government, other than Seamus O'Regan, full credit to him. Last week, and I've seen one utterance. I haven't seen a peep from the Prime Minister, even though this is going to affect millions of Canadians.
Yeah.
And I just think it's irresponsible of the government of Michigan, obviously. It's irresponsible of President Biden to be allowing this kind of demagoguery to continue.
Yeah, that was the essence of the Globe and Mail editorial yesterday, is if Biden doesn't do something about Line 5, it's going to hurt a lot worse than anything Trump ever did to Canada.
Precisely.
So, yeah.
And the Prime Minister is sound asleep at the switch. He's not talking about it. He wants to shilly-shally and on abortion instead of talking about the immediate impact of a shutdown of Line 5. So I think that the Prime Minister is abdicating his responsibility to protect Canadians. Instead of shilly-shallying about a law that's not going to be passed, about a policy that's not going to be changed, reasons to try to embarrass the Conservatives instead of doing the job he's paid and elected to do, which is look after all of us. And this is about to shut down Line 5 and cause enormous damage to millions of people in Ontario and Quebec. It's just so unbelievably, sickeningly irresponsible.
But it's also, Diane Francis makes the case, and it's certainly something that I brought up last week on my program, is we have the third largest oil reserve in the world by any, and our natural gas reserves are some of the largest in the world. By any measure, we should be an energy superpower. And yet, because of 4.5 kilometers through the Straits of Mackinac that we don't have any say over, look at how vulnerable we are. It's so nonsensical that we're in this position.
There is a treaty that was signed by the two countries some years ago after Line 5. Absolutely made a treaty by the two sovereign nations of Canada and the United States that said that the state governments or provincial governments may not. So here we are, we have a rogue governor breaking a treaty or trying to violate a treaty between Canada and the United States, and the Prime Minister is absolutely silent, as is the President of the United States, because they don't want to upset, I presume, their base of the radical environmentalists who don't give a flying tinker's damn if millions of Canadians are hurt by. This isn't a,
No, I know. I appreciate your colorful language.
No, but the reason I'm saying that is we're not talking about flying to Florida for a holiday.
No.
People forget every hospital, to my knowledge, in this country is heated with natural gas. I know every classroom and every university that natural gas.
Sure.
High-rise buildings are heated. My house in Ottawa, along with 60% of all the homes in Canada, are heated with natural gas. And so this is...
Well, you're in the poor part of the glebe. I'm sure you must have an old coal stove there somewhere that you can use or something.
No coal stoves whatsoever. No coal stoves whatsoever. Okay. And, this demagoguery is going on
I know.
Because it's politically fashionable, and they're playing with the lives of ordinary Canadians
you're right.
and putting them at risk. And that's what's so shameful about this.
Okay. Look, very quickly, a minute or less, British Columbia health officials say they are secondary colleges and universities in British Columbia full return to school this September. Do you think you'll be back in the classroom in September at Carleton?
I'm cautiously optimistic. It really hinges on one thing. Are most of us going to be vaccinated? My joke is, and this is a joke what's coming, but when they call up that me to go in and go into the line to get one, I'm going to be knocking over little old ladies and little old men to get to the front of the line. Now, I'm not, of course, going to do that literally. I'm speaking metaphorically.
No, I know.
I want the vaccine. We all do.
Yeah.
And if everyone or the vast majority of people are vaccinated, I think we will be back in the classroom. But probably most of the universities in Canada are going to move towards a hybrid model where you will you'll have some classes in the classroom and some will be online. And because they're foreign students and they can't get a visa for whatever reason, I think we will continue to offer at least one section of each of the courses with an online option. So I think we're going to see it's going to be, back to the classroom, but on a hybrid basis, on a hybrid option basis.
Okay. Talk to you next week.
Okay.
It's a date. Thank you.
Okay.
Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. The Talkback Hour at 750-1310 is next on City News.
WW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 101.1 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, March 9th. Mostly sunny, -1, but it does feel like -5 with the wind. And in Smiths Falls, it's 2 degrees. Here's what's making news right now. With the mass COVID-19 vaccination effort launching today in the GTA, there is some concern that some people could be lying to get their shot sooner than they should. City News reporter Kevin Meisner joins us from Queen's Park with the latest on the vaccine rollout as we try to avoid a third wave.
People won't have to prove they have a medical condition that qualifies them for an early COVID-19 shot. Health Minister Christine Elliott says the province is relying on the honor system.
People they're honest. The vaccine.
But head of critical care at Toronto's Michael Garron Hospital, Dr. Michael Warner, says that's an invitation for the dishonest to slip into line for the shot earlier than they should.
If we don't have a structure, if we don't have a framework, if we don't have true criteria that can be enforced and checked, people will jump the queue, and the people who really need the vaccine will have to.
Vaccinations is key to slowing the surge of COVID-19 variants and a possible third wave of the virus. In Toronto alone, nearly 40% of the city's new cases are screening positive for variants of concern. Kevin Meisner, Queen's Park.
Meanwhile, Ottawa residents born in or before 1931 can begin phone, along with tens of thousands of area healthcare workers. Those 90 and older will be able to get their shot starting on Friday. However, the healthcare workers are only being allowed to pre-register, and they will be contacted by public health. The Canadian Armed Forces has announced Lieutenant General Chief of the Defense Staff. Lieutenant General Allen is the first woman to hold the role. Lieutenant Michael Rouleau now becomes the strategic advisor on future capabilities. This comes as the military's 2 most senior officers, Admiral Art MacDonald and General Jonathan Vance, remain under investigation by the Canadian Armed Forces National Investigative Service for alleged sexual misconduct. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development says Canada could benefit from a faster economic rebound in the United States this year.
The OECD says the world economy is bouncing back from the pandemic faster than expected, thanks in part to vaccines and U.S. stimulus efforts. But the improvements are uneven, and it's still concerned about unemployment. The OECD predicts global output will surpass pre-pandemic levels by the middle of this year, predicting Canada's economy will grow 4.7% and the U.S. economy by 6.5%. It should lead to beneficial spillovers for other economies, particularly Canada and Mexico. Don Kelly, The Canadian Press.
We're learning more about what happened in the months leading up to Nova Scotia's worst mass killing. Court documents say that in the months before he killed 22 people, the gunman showed off a powerful rifle that he said was for a movie. City News reporter Mark Hodgins with more.
The killer didn't have a firearms license, but he opened the trunk of his car to reveal a military-style gun to a friend from work, telling him its firing pin had been removed, according to documents used to obtain search warrants. Another witness told police he saw an unmarked a replica cruiser at the killer's property, but he was told the car was being fixed up for use in parades. The gunman would go on to use illegally obtained guns with overcapacity magazines, including 2 semi-automatic rifles and 2 pistols, to commit his murders before being killed by police on April 19th. He drove a replica RCMP police vehicle and wore a police uniform during the rampage. The killer's spouse also telling police he showed his guns to numerous people, including her brother and her sister's boyfriend. Mark Hodgins, News 95.7.
The province just reporting 1,185 new cases of COVID-19 in Ontario. We'll have the local breakdown coming in the next half hour. I'm Victoria Williston.
It's time to talk back
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Your hour. Talk back. Me right now. 750-1310. 750-1310. 613-750-1310. Three things on my mind today. Do you think it's okay to have this vaccine honor system? The vaccine honor system, do you have faith that we can get through the area with a vaccine honor system? Or if the big issue is pre-existing medical conditions. If you have a pre-existing medical condition that makes the government's list, then you're closer to the front of the line for a vaccine. Pre-existing medical condition, should you have to offer up some kind of proof that you suffer from this pre-existing medical condition, or is an honor system good enough for you? What do you think? You heard our report in the news. There is the potential for, for vaccine fraud, I guess you could say. Should you have to present, a letter from your doctor, a note from your doctor, maybe a prescription or something like that? What do you think about that? 750-1310, or can we get by on the honor system? Yeah, there will be some jerks, but they'll mostly be isolated. 50-1310. How worried, if at all, how worried are you about the 4-month interval between the first dose and the second dose of the two? This came up yesterday at the House of Commons Health Committee. The CEO of Pfizer Canada appeared at that committee and said that's not what we recommend here at Pfizer Canada. We recommend 21 days apart, and that's what the regulator, Health Canada, approved.
And I point to the product monograph that has been agreed to with Health Canada, which assigns a 21-day dose versus the NACI recommendation, which is now 4 months, creates concern, confusion, and potentially hesitancy from certain people within Canada.
Okay. It erodes confidence in our vaccine, is what the CEO of Pfizer Canada is saying. So that's another issue that I would like to hear from you today on that issue. And 2 years and no federal budget from the Trudeau Liberals. 2 years without federal budget. This is something, despite all the crisis that this country has faced in its glorious history, this is something that has never happened in all of Canadian history. That a government would go so long without presenting a full spending plan, a federal budget. Is that acceptable to you? Not acceptable to me. 2 years without a federal budget? Are you kidding me? 750-1310, 750-1310. We just heard from the professor, Professor Ian Lee, his thoughts on this delay, no federal budget coming in April either. I think it's terrible. I'm with the professor. I don't think there's any excuse for this. All the provinces and all the territories have managed to pass their budgets. Cities like Ottawa managed to pass a budget. City of Toronto, cities and small towns all across the country. Municipal councils have managed to pass municipal budgets. Government of Ontario passed a budget. Mr. Bethlen Falvey, the new finance minister, is preparing his next budget right now. Reported in the media this week, it is the only G7 country that hasn't passed a budget, and it will have been more than 2 years since we have seen a budget from this government. Seriously, what gives? Why? Let me ask you this. Why do we send people to the House of Commons at all? Why do we have elections at all? This is one of the main jobs of being a member of Parliament, especially if you're in the governing party of the day. You're the government. You're the elected representative. Okay? It is the government's job to do what? Collect all the taxes and then decide how you're going to spend all the taxes. And once a year, can you do us a favor? Do you think you could share that information with Canadians once a year? It's not supposed to be like the Olympics. I would go so far as to call this is a dereliction of duty. What is happening right now under this government? What has been going on in political Ottawa with this and seek with a federal budget? You know, Professor Lee thinks the reason they're playing hide and seek is because the numbers are so explosive. They just don't want to fess up about how much they've really spent and how much they plan to spend, the size of the deficit. They don't want to provide any kind of timeline, let alone a plan to narrow a deficit over time. They want to keep that hidden from Canadians for, well, as long as they can get away with it, right? And look, they've gotten away with it for 2 years. So why not keep doing it? Besides, the leader of the opposition does a news conference. The first questions are about abortion, for crying out loud. That's what the media cares about when it asks Erin O'Toole questions. They don't care about, the media doesn't care about budgets and deficits. It cares about it's abortion. Two years, no budget. Where do we stand and what's the plan? Don't you think your government should be telling you that? Why else do we elect governments if not to perform this very basic function in a parliamentary democracy? And I would also point out, without a budget, there are no votes on the budget, no money votes, no votes of confidence. That you a minority government and trigger an election. Isn't that convenient if you're Mr. Trudeau? The budget, the budget, the budget. Maybe the government will fall on the budget. Well, breaking news, not if there's no budget. Come on. It's just not right. (750-1310), 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Dave, Ottawa. Good morning. Morning, Dave.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir.
I'm a respiratory therapist, and I look after life support right now between jobs.
Okay.
I think I could jump the line and get in, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait my turn because there are other people who need it more.
Okay.
So you asked about the honor system. You're going to have a few people cheating, but we're going to wait.
Okay. But you're a respiratory therapist, you said?
Yeah, I look after people who can't breathe because of COVID.
Right. Okay. You're between jobs? You think that I would think that would be a job that's pretty much in demand right now, Dave?
No, Ottawa is a very remarkable city.
Right. Okay. Okay. I guess what I'm getting at is if you have a pre-existing medical condition or health condition, chronic health condition, or some kind of a disability, for example, you will be moved further up in the queue. The fear is that will lead some to basically fake it and say they have a chronic medical condition when they really don't. Should you have to provide some proof?
That's between them and their doctors. I think the city should be asking for something from the doctors.
From the doctors, right, okay.
They don't have to give any details. It's no one's business.
Nobody's business. Okay, all right.
But yeah, you're going to get some people cheating.
Yes, I would say so, yeah. I mean, you're kind of opening it up to there being cheating, aren't you? If you're working on this honor system?
But the honest truth is, doses they have to use before the 2nd of April.
Right.
So
okay.
Honestly, the big fear is there's going to have doses left over that spoil.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, we got to get it into arms.
Okay.
If somebody's happy enough with their conscience to cheat, well, that's their social value, I guess.
All right. Yeah. Okay, thank you. In Hammond on the budget, no budget for 2 years. Wayne.
How are you today?
I'm fired up on that one. Actually.
Yeah,
Wayne, I'm kind of mad about it, Wayne, to tell you the truth. I think they should do their jobs. What am I electing an MP for if not to decide how he's going to spend my money or how she's going to spend my money?
Exactly. I don't. He should not call an election until they got a budget out. Once they put out a budget, the truth comes out. Then he can maybe call an election and let the Canadians vote truthfully on how he's messed this up.
Yeah. Well, whether he's messed it up or whether there's going to be an election, come on. This is one of the core functions of Parliament, is to debate how the government is going to spend the money that we send to the government, right? 2 years on. Yeah. Look, I understand it's been a difficult year for everybody in the country. We've had difficult times. We've had wars, we've had depressions, we've had recessions, we've had natural disasters, we've had all kinds of things in Canada. It's not the first crisis, nor will it be the last. 2 years without a budget has never happened before in Canadian history, and it's about time that it ended. It's about time that it ended.
Nobody's talking about it but you. You bring out the truth, you bring out the facts. G7s, all the rest of the G7s have done it. We haven't. Why?
Good
Is
question.
it because of incompetence?
Good
they
question.
Just don't want to do it? They got better things to do?
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Well,
I don't know either, my friend.
Yeah, it's exactly, Win. Okay, thank you. We're talking vaccines. We're talking vaccine intervals. We're talking the vaccine honor system. All of it. 750-1310 Rob Snow Show. Talk Back Hour on City News.
I started, as I said, at Lester's Barber Shop, and it was kind of, it was one of those things that it was just an opportune time for me to get into it, just because he had decided that he was going to retire after the fire, and then the opportunity presented itself that I could open my own shop. And so I went from a 150 square foot space on St. Patrick's Street to a 600 square foot space just on Beechwood to now here, and I'm in a 1,400 square foot space now. And I don't know, it's been an interesting journey because, you think that you're just going to be just you or a really small space, and then all of a sudden, you've got 10 other people working for you. You're in a much bigger space, and even incorporating the boutique. Last March, when all of this started, we closed down a little bit earlier than everybody else, and I'm going to say, being honest, part of it was social pressure. We shut down before everybody else did, and I'm watching all these other salons, just be really responsible and saying we don't want to be a part of the process. So we got ahead of it and closed, and then, the week later, the government's like, everybody's shutting down. And so it was a little nerve-wracking. I guess the first step of us, trying to innovate and just keep moving forward was when the salon is closed, right? It's like, what do you do? Our whole industry is based on being with people, cutting their hair, providing a service. You have to be people together to do that. You can't do that remotely at all. So one of the first things that I saw in our industry, what people were trying to do is they were selling their hair products that they had. And luckily, I've had a website that always had a web store in the back. I just never used it. So as soon as I saw that people were doing that, I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to load up all my stuff. And so that worked out really, really well. And then from there, I managed to find a place that was like a wholesale website that allowed you can order all the stuff. You don't have to prepay any of it. There's free returns, all that. So that made it really easy for me to bring in other products and start trying to sell it. And so I went from selling hair products to shave products to bath and body products to a little bit of clothing and jewelry, and now it's just morphed into this whole, I want to make it a whole legit boutique. And by December of last year, I decided that this is a full-fledged thing and we're going to separate it. It's its own company. So it's really finding an opportunity that's there and running with it. So it's been really fun. Our clients are loving it. Our clients that have been here for a long time, they love it.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Vaccine honor system, big topic this morning. Could this backfire or much ado about nothing, nothing to worry about? It's one of the next potential trouble spots for the vaccine rollout in Ontario. This honor system about health conditions, concern about it today, at least in the media. Maybe it's not a big deal. It's not the big deal some are making it out to be. Or maybe they're right on the money. I don't know. But I want to put it to you. I want to find out what you think about it. That's why we do the Talkback Hour at 750-1310. The concern is people are going to be a bunch of fakers. They're going to lie. They're going to say, oh, I have a pre-existing health condition, so they can get closer to the front of the line for the vaccine. And it appears as though, at this point in time, the government is, we're talking about the Ontario government, we're going to rely on an honor system. Take people at their word when they say they have a pre-existing health condition that could launch them closer to the front of the line. The government is, it's going to assume that those people are telling the truth. And there's concern that means this is open to abuse. This is a Toronto Star report on this morning. People are asked a series of questions when they come in. Health Minister Christine Elliott told reporters yesterday. In some cases, they can probably verify that with their primary care physicians, but in most cases, people are honest. Or Elliott later clarified many people with specific conditions won't be booking their vaccinations through the provincial health system slated to begin operating March 15th, will likely get their shots at specialty clinics or at their own healthcare providers who already have the individual's health records on hand. It goes on. The list of specific medical conditions was released Friday in the government's latest version of the vaccination plan. It includes recipients of organ transplants, hematopoietic stem cell transplants, people with neurological diseases that impair respiratory function, people with immune deficiencies, autoimmune disorders, strokes, dementia, obesity with a body mass index over 40, kidney disease, intellectual disabilities such as Down syndrome, heart disease, spleen problems, liver disease, pregnancy, and some mental disorders. Said local public health units will let residents know when they're eligible for the shots. If a person is showing up for an appointment not eligible, vaccination staff would ask you to come back at a later time, but we haven't run into very many of those situations, Christine Elliott said. Okay, the honor system. People are worried. Some people are going to try and game the system, fake it. Okay, going to fake a pre-existing health condition in order to get a shot sooner than they otherwise would. What do you think? What do you think? Anne in Ottawa. Good morning, Anne.
Hi. All of this is such a circular argument because if we had enough vaccine supply, thanks to Mr. Trudeau, we don't, we wouldn't have to do all this stuff.
Right.
But because...
We could even give it to the fakers.
The thing is, I'm sorry, this is life and death.
Yeah.
You cannot just rely on the honor system. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be happy if someone who's 50 lies, says they have asthma or something,
right,
and just gets a shot before me. That's not right.
No, it's not.
I mean, I'm among the group that's dropping like flies. So I would love to just say I trust people, but not everybody.
So you think there should be safeguards in there?
There should be.
Right.
At least maybe get a script from your doctor or something.
Yeah.
Anything, something.
Right.
I mean,
right. Look, I have a kidney issue or a heart issue or a liver issue or whatever, and here's my prescription right here.
Doctor knows what medications I'm on. He knows what I'm being. I have high blood pressure, I have cholesterol problems.
Yeah.
There are other people who should get it before me. Like you mentioned a few of them, but this is just way too lackadaisical. No.
Too lackadaisical. Okay,
I'm not comfortable at all.
Not comfortable at all. Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Yep. Bye. Okay. Other people might say, look, give people the benefit of the doubt. If they say they have a pre-existing medical condition, they're probably telling the truth. Let's get this line moving along, people. 750-1310. What do you think? Or is it a boondoggle waiting to happen? Irene in Ottawa. Good morning, Irene.
excuse me, I don't. This is so chaotic. It's just like it's just like the federal Liberals, the chaos.
Yeah.
Right. But here's my issue. What about the guy in charge of the country? What about the guy that went to the Yukon?
But what about him? Yeah.
Well, I mean, were they honest? They left the country to go get the vaccine, right?
Yeah.
I'm bringing my Medic Alert bracelet.
Okay.
To show that I'm on, I do have the
medical condition.
I do have the pre-existing medical conditions. But what happened? Why are we paying Hillier $20,000 a month? Like, if they can't get this straight.
Right.
I would have thought that if I could have booked in the middle of March, being age 65 and over, that when they give me the appointment, they would already know.
They would already know. Yeah, okay. Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just not making sense.
Okay. Or when you sign up to make the appointment, there would be some disclaimer, say, that says, and you must offer, in your case, Medic Alert bracelet, or a note from your doctor, or a prescription.
Well, it's hard to get a note from your doctor.
Yeah, that is hard. And when I've talked to my family doctor, he said it's such a pain. I hate it when I have to take up any time in my office having to write letters, doctor's notes.
I have a medical appointment today, by phone. And the thing I got yesterday said, if you miss the appointment, you're going to be charged $50.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Like I don't know. It's so chaotic.
Okay.
It's distressful.
But you're a no on this idea of having an honor system, though, right?
Well, I guess all these politicians call themselves honorable anyway, so I guess they think we're all like them.
All right, the Honorable Irene, I will let you go. Thank you. All right, bye-bye. That's it. We've reached halftime for the Talk Back Hour. Back right after the news with more of your phone calls on The Rob Snow Show here on City News.
#1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101 AM.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, March 9th. I'm Victoria Williston. Right now in Ottawa, we're finally in the positives. Partly cloudy, 3 degrees. Smiths Falls, it's partly cloudy and 4. Here's what's making news right now. We are seeing a slight dip in cases today with the province 85 new COVID-19 infections. 45 of those cases are in Ottawa, 3 in Renfrew, 7 in Leeds, and 10 in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit area. The province is also reporting 6 new COVID-related deaths. Ottawa residents born in or before 1931 can be by phone, along with tens of thousands of area healthcare workers. Those age 90 and older will be able to get the shot starting on Friday at the Nepean Sportsplex. However, the designated healthcare workers are only being allowed to pre-register. And Buckingham Palace has yet to respond to Prince Harry and bullying and insensitivity. A royal biographer believes the charges the couple made in the interview with Oprah Winfrey are so damaging that the palace will have to respond publicly. I'm Victoria Williston for News Anytime. You can follow us online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to
Bob Snow Show.
have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
I get it. You want to talk about vaccines, and I'm right there with you, but don't forget that this government has not presented a budget into government, okay? Maybe you think it's inside baseball and maybe people don't really care about this kind of thing. Fair enough. It doesn't mean it's not important, okay? It doesn't mean that the Trudeau government should get away with this kind of stuff. Look, it's bad enough, the state of the House of Commons right now. Zoom meetings. This is what passes for Parliament, okay? Remember, this government early in the pandemic, they tried to shut down your Parliament for 2 years in a power grab. The very least, and I mean the very least, that this government can do is something other level of government has managed to do in this country, okay? Pass a budget. This is how much you're bringing in tax. This is how much you're going to spend. This is how much you have left over. Oh, wait, you don't have anything left over. Oh, wait, you spent $400 billion more than you brought in. Whatever. Gosh, people, that's why you elect your MP and send them to Ottawa. This is the core function of the job. You come up with a budget, you debate the budget, you vote on a budget, you pass a budget. This is what governing is all about. Without it, what civics lesson for you, okay? In case some people forgot high school or don't know how Parliament is supposed to function. The government of Canada can't spend any of your money, not a quarter, not a dime, not a loonie, unless the Canadian Parliament approves spending of that money with something called a vote in the House of Commons, and then in the Senate. In fact, they have to vote 1, 2, 3 times. We don't concentrate authority, raise money through taxes in the office of one person, the Prime Minister, standing outside a Rideau cottage. It's great for the Prime Minister to do his Rideau cottage shtick and say, we're going to spend $15 billion on this. Well, only if we have a vote in the House of Commons. Only if eventually someone becomes a Governor General and can actually give royal assent to a bill. It's why when the governing party can't pass a money bill, there is deemed to be no confidence in the government, and we have it. It is the heart. It's at the very heart of our system of government. Look, extraordinary times, sure, but 2 years in, this is record-breaking. We have had difficult times before. We have wars, stock market meltdowns, financial crises, recessions, and depressions. And yet we've never had anything like this. A governing party refusing to send a spending plan to Parliament so parliamentarians can do their job, debate the spending priorities of the government. Send it off to the Senate, off to the GG. It is time to get on with things here. It is beyond anything that should be considered acceptable. You know, even if the federal government had invoked the powers under the Emergencies Act, which it hasn't even done, after 90 days, this lack of a spending plan's gone on for 2 years. Totally unacceptable. It's not one-party rule up there. This is a minority government we have. All right, rant done. And I feel better. Thank you. Chris Brockville. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes.
Just quickly on your budget that you were just saying, I think the budget would trigger an election, to be honest, and I think that's they want to kind of control.
Well, so what if it does? So what if it does, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm completely on your side. I just think that's what that's about. Anyhow, what I called about is the honor system not working.
Yeah, the vaccine honor system, yeah.
I mean, people couldn't stay at home when they were told to, and that was kind of like an honor system. And now with the possibility of like vaccine passports, that kind of stuff in the future, it just seems to me that it's going to just be all sorts of abuse when people want to get to the front of the line to get this vaccine. Work. There has to be something to validate the people.
You just can't show up and say, I have a pre-existing health condition, I want to be at the front of the line.
I agree.
Should not happen. Okay. Yeah, excellent, Chris. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for waiting, sir. Yeah. Eric. Good morning, Eric.
I think you've got to depend on the honor system.
Yeah.
Just because otherwise there's going to be absolute and utter chaos.
Okay.
And there are some checks and balances that you can apply here, I believe, because most of the risk assessment that's been done on grouping folks for vaccine has been. Everyone has a birth certificate. Everyone has or most people have a birth certificate. Most people have a driver's license, library card, or whatever. Right. That has a date on it.
Yep.
Maybe that's what you need as a first cut. When you start looking for, to my mind at least, if you start for notes from the doc, that's when things are just going to.
You think it's going to gum up the system?
It's going to sink the system. I believe into chaos.
Into chaos. Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, people are going to do what people do. I mean, people are out there to save themselves.
Sure.
What people say generally.
Yeah.
If your butt's on the line, you're going to protect your butt first.
Okay. All right.
Well,
okay.
No, but it's the truth.
No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
On the second point.
Yes.
On this vaccine dosing.
The dosing interval. Yeah. 4 months.
I think it's absolutely ludicrous.
Oh, okay.
The recommendation came from the NACI, the National.
National Advisory Committee on Immunization.
On immunization.
It says 112 days is fine.
Well, it says 112 days. But, you don't realize that the NACI is not wholly a they bring policy and politics into it, into their decision making. And I'll give you just a quick example, because in addition to the science, they look at political factors such as economics, ethics, equity, feasibility, and acceptability in governing their deliberations. As soon as you bring in those latter 5 or 6 factors,
right.
you stepped away from science, and you've got this.
You're more into social science. You're into social science
and politics, which is just not right.
Okay.
And you should not be basing scientific decisions on non-scientific endpoints.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Yeah. Okay. The dosing interval, 4 months between doses of vaccine. Big report this morning. iPolitics, Charlie Pinkerton, excellent report this morning about the interval between doses to 4 months. Doing in Ontario, it's already what they're going to do in British Columbia. It's 90 days in Quebec. It is not what is recommended by the manufacturer, in this case, Pfizer, BioNTech, 2-dose vaccine, 21 days apart between doses. National Advisory Committee on Immunization gave its blessing just last week to this 4-month interval. And politicians and public health officials are pointing to that advice when they talk about the experts. The experts have given this approval. 112 days instead of 21 days. Pfizer vaccine. The interesting twist and the scoop that Charlie has this morning is that nobody from NACI ever picked up the phone and actually talked to Pfizer about this, which I find kind of incredible. So we're going to play this clip again. Cole Pino is the president of Pfizer Canada, a witness appearing at the Commons Health Committee yesterday, asked about the guidance from NACI.
And I point to the product monograph that has been agreed to with Health Canada, which assigns a 21-day dose, which is now 4 months, creates concern, confusion, and potentially hesitancy from certain people within Canada.
Hesitancy, concern, confusion, and hesitancy. But the idea on the ground where there has been, and look, we had talk about, well, it all depends on the supply. It all depends on the supply. 20 times did he say that yesterday in my interview? The idea is the supply is so precious. Let's say you have 100,000 doses, just as an example. Let's say you have 100,000 doses. Do you give 100,000 people have at least some immunity? Or do you give 50,000 people a shot, put 50,000 doses in the deep freezer, and then give the same shot to the same 50,000 people 3 weeks later? And the other 50,000 people haven't even had one shot yet. This is the because of bad decision-making by the Trudeau government, right? Tight supplies, failed launch. You know the story by now. So the consensus seems to be when the vaccines arrive, let's get as many doses into as many people as we can with at least one shot. Because NACI says the real-life evidence seems to suggest there is a certain amount of protection against COVID-19 after just one dose, okay? So if you want to talk about that, by all means, we can talk about that. We can talk about the vaccine honor system as well. Michelle.
Yes. I want to talk about the vaccine rollout. I just got my Pfizer dose on Friday.
Good for you, sir.
Yeah.
How did you score that?
I'm 34, and I'm
You're 34.
I'm an Indigenous male adult. Oh. So we are part of phase 1.
Okay.
And with that honor system going on, I saw people who were, I'm assuming, abusing it because you weren't allowed to be asked if you were a Native or not.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, no, I went Friday. I got it done, and I saw people there, and they don't ask for your proof of Indigenousness. And yeah, no, I was ready to present
like
mine.
A status card or something like that.
Or whatnot, but no, they are not allowed to ask.
Like I could show up and say I'm.
Yeah, they ask you what your tie.
I'm a member of Algonquin or whatever. Or...
Yeah, you could say that, and they're not going to double check it.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, no, the people are already out there going through there. I work with a couple other guys. I work roofing, and they have their vaccines as well. We don't really have the health risks. They're not Native. They have other things that are going on that allow them to get it. But yeah, no.
But they do. Michelle, they really do have chronic health conditions, though?
No, they do not.
Oh, they don't?
Yeah, no, they do not.
Oh.
We're young, healthy males that are working.
Wow, okay. This is not encouraging, Michelle.
I mean, the rollout's out there, and they're encouraging people to get their vaccine as soon as possible, and that's what people are doing.
Okay, all right. I didn't think it would be that easy. Oh, you're not pulling my leg or anything, Michelle.
No,
You're
I'm not pulling your leg. Okay. I have my second for the April 13th.
April 13th?
It's already booked.
Holy
so,
God.
I mean, it's out there. I got the Pfizer. My sister was able to get her dose as an Indigenous person before she could as a nurse.
Oh, well, as a nurse, yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, okay. But you're in pretty good health, though.
Oh, I'm in perfect health. I was
perfect health. Okay, all right.
So I'm saying, like, yeah, I mean...
Do you feel, let me ask you this, do you feel like you jumped the line?
Do I feel like it?
Yeah.
No, not at all. I mean, I'm out there, frontline worker, sort of, construction, and I'm going out there doing things in the world, still going to the grocery store, and I'm going to protect my family as much as I can and protect who else is around me. I don't want to go around spreading the COVID, even though I have not had it or haven't been sick in 2 years now.
Okay. All right. Okay, Michelle, thanks for the call. Thanks for the call, sir. Yep. Good call. 750-1310, 750-1310, final quarter. The final quarter around the stretch they come. Our Rob Snow Show on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program. Can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe community. Great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. Growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to bring. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years and Market Mobile is a little younger. 14. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had layoffs, maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Rob Snow Show, Talkback Hour. On the 2 doses, I just want to point out, I've had so many experts on this show over the last year on this issue of vaccine intervals and days between doses. It's really something that I put to the experts, the scientists, ever since the first vaccines were first approved back in December and the first shots were being administered. And I will say this, to a T, they've all told me they're not concerned about this interval, that it's 4 months. They've told me they're thrilled with the superior protection, for example, to what you would often get with the seasonal flu shot. And they have told me, and they're the ones with all the letters after their names and did all the experiments on all the mice and everything like that. We should not fear going so long between doses. I can't stress that enough because I don't want to be accused of fear mongering. But nevertheless, the goalposts have clearly been moved. And they were never intended to be used this way. And it all comes back to the fact there are still issues with supply. Now, hopefully, as the year goes on, less of an issue, and that's what Mr. Trudeau's been saying for months. On track, on track, on track. We're on track. September. The election will be long in the rearview mirror by September, ladies and gentlemen. Who knows? Bill. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Rob. That's a very good question because something must be terribly going on there for them not to call a budget. They must be doing something that they don't want us to know.
Well, wouldn't you like to see it? I mean, it's just one more thing. It's one more great mystery, isn't it, Bill? What is in there that they don't want us to see?
Well, if the Americans can conduct a presidential election during a civil war, they can certainly submit a budget.
I would think so, Bill. Yeah. I would think so. Don't you think it's about time we had a federal budget? You know, this is how much tax we're taking in, and this is how much we're going to spend, and this is where we're going to spend it, and...
if you want to know where the country's going, you want to know that sort of thing.
You would like to know that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the public should be concerned about how casual they're taking all this in, because if you allow corrupt government like this to go on, it will go on.
For being concerned about that, at least somebody is. Pulling teeth to get people to talk about budgets and deficits, that's only money. It's only your money. You're good for it. North Core, Jim.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Jim.
I was just telling your chum there on the thing, I got called by my doctor office and they set up an appointment, so...
Okay.
For Saturday. And I live in the city, but my doctor's office is in Kempville, and I'm going to Kempville to get it.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
So, a little upset.
His office to go get the vaccine.
Well, actually, no, they're having it at the recreation center in Kempville.
At a clinic.
His office is about a quarter mile down the road.
I see. Okay. All right.
I'm just a little concerned when I hear, like, my wife is a year younger than I am, and I asked about if she could get it because she has some compromising medical problems. And then I find out the young lad from Carlton Place.
34.
He's 34, healthy as a horse. And he's, what is he? Did you say he was...
he says he's indigenous, yeah.
What's that mean for a person? He's indigenous and he gets it.
Well, he has a status card, and that's, I guess, just the way it is. Yeah,
nice, eh? We got a prime minister that tells lies, and, oh, boy, are we...
But on this, Jim, on this, okay?
Hey?
Idea of an honor system.
Oh, yeah, sure, honor, yeah.
Okay.
Honor and offer.
Okay, behave. Okay, behave, Jim. You're going to get me in trouble. Okay.
Hey?
Would you feel guilty if your wife jumped the line?
Well, no.
Or somebody jumped the line and said.
The doctor's office called me. They know her situation, and,
right?
And then we find the young lad that called and says what he said. That his buddies are jumping the line. I got a couple young grandsons.
Yeah, okay. The buddies, I don't know how they jumped the line. I don't know. How do you do that?
No honor. Offer. Come on, you and I.
All right. Okay. All right. Our conversation ends there, my friend, for today. We will move along. Darnell in Ottawa. Good morning. Darnell?
Oh, sorry, Rob. It's Daryl.
Oh, Daryl. Okay. It says Darnell here. Oh, go ahead.
Good to talk to you. So listen, a couple things. One, honor system, they really have no choice. They have to do that.
Okay.
Because if they don't, one, it's going to gum up the system. And second, there are tens of thousands of people in this province who are eligible for the vaccine who do not have a doctor.
Right. Okay. No family doctor. No. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sure.
So there's no way to check that sort of thing. Second thing is the honor system, dishonor system, whatever you want to call it. We just have to let people do what they're going to do, and they'll have to deal with their conscience.
Yeah.
But there's not really any way to regulate that efficiently.
Okay. Let's just get people in. Let's just get people in there, out of there as soon as we can.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I do disagree with them changing the manufacturer's recommendations for these vaccines.
Okay.
I haven't had my shot yet. I have a number of health conditions, and I'm 69, obese, black. I could go on and on.
Right.
But I want both my shots according to the guidelines from the manufacturers, not some expert that had nothing to do with creating it.
So you are a bit concerned about that. You're a bit concerned about that. Gotcha. All right. Very concerned about it. Okay. All right, Daryl. Thank you. Got to run.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you for your call. Appreciate it. Up next, Canada. Rick.
Yeah, on the budget there, Rob.
Yes, sir, on the budget.
On the budget, yeah. Unfortunately, I think for all intents and purposes, we are basically bankrupt as a country now, once again.
Okay.
And I don't think they want to release the budget because then they'll have the ratings agencies all over them because now the debt problem is so bad. The ratings agency, as a standard,
Yeah, will it be downgraded? Do you think?
Big time, as a standard of professionalism. I mean, S&P ignored us last year in August when Fitch downgraded us, and I don't know why they did that or how they were talked into avoiding downgrading us last August. But that's what's going to happen, and this is a perfect example of where we've allowed with our democratic institutions far too much. And vaccines is another issue, playing around with the interval dates between the doses and so on. And we're just letting the political parties get away with too much now, and our democracy is not being well served at all.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, sir. Roger. This will be the last one. Morning, Roger. Morning, Roger.
Talk about two things. One about the vaccine. I believe in the honor system because I'll just give you an example, okay, Rob?
Okay.
Like we get all these banks and all these businesses in this country, and some of them have cash, so there's a certain amount of people that like to go in there and rob these places. It's not. That's the way it is. So, in order to look after that, we got to check everybody going into a bank and store, frisk them all. Well, that's not going to work. And it's not going to work either with the honor system when it comes to the vaccines. There's enough problems getting this thing rolled out in the first place, never mind the lack of vaccines.
Right.
I think we have to be, as a democratic free society, we have to let people, and they have to live by their conscience. Now, we might suffer by it, some of us, but that's what a free society does, Rob.
Okay.
Now, getting to the budget.
Yes. Very quickly, Roger. 30 seconds, Roger.
Okay, 30 seconds?
Yeah.
I don't expect any different, Rob, because I think the deficit right now is $1.28 trillion because gave the reins to power to Justin Trudeau. It was around 780 or 760. Trudeau added $100 billion before, or more than that, before Corona, and another $400 billion. In my books, I figure it's between 1.28 and 1.26 trillion dollars, and we're not going to see a budget. If this government gets a majority, Rob, we'll see another budget again. They'll be called a financial statement.
Okay. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, sir. Thank you for all of your calls today. Great calls. That's it for the Talkback Hour. Our focus is education in the final hour of the program here on City News.
is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News. And 1310 AM.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, March 9th. I'm Victoria Williston. Right now in Ottawa, partly cloudy, 3 degrees. Smiths Falls, 4 degrees. Here's what's making news right now. In about a half an hour, the Prime Minister will be holding his as the country sees another week of vaccine deliveries ramping up. But a majority of people in a new poll doubt that Canada will hit its fall vaccination target. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney joins us with the details.
This week, our country's receiving around 910,000 doses of COVID-19. Such as the AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson vaccines, those weekly deliveries should continue to rise over the spring. But Canadians still don't think we'll have enough to vaccinate every Canadian that wants the shot by the end of September, as promised by the Prime Minister. A new Ipsos poll for Global shows 52% of people don't think we'll hit that goal. Canada hit struggles in the early months of 2021 with vaccine delivery disruptions from Pfizer and Moderna, but those seem to be in the rearview mirror. The CEO of Ipsos says Canadians seem to be in a transitional point of view, and while they have hope of being vaccinated before the end of summer, they need more proof from the feds. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
But as more and more people are getting vaccinated, Canada and other countries thinking about whether or not to set up a COVID vaccination passport, meaning that you would have to show proof of vaccination to travel. But the World Health Organization says it's a bad idea.
The WHO says there are ethical issues with a vaccine passport, like the shots might not be easily accessible globally, saying it wouldn't be equitable and could discriminate against people who are in that situation. Meantime, Canada's Health Minister Patty Hajdu says Canada's working on the idea with other G7 partners, including the United States. Several airlines, especially in the States, have been pushing for vaccine passports, believing it would likely reduce international travel restrictions and revive the struggling industry. Some countries already require proof of vaccines against other diseases like yellow fever. The Air Travel Association's working on guidelines that major airlines would follow. I'm Safe Kaiser.
Meanwhile, Ottawa residents born in or before 1931 can begin scheduling their vaccine appointments. 90 and older living anywhere in Ottawa will be able to get the shot starting Friday at the Nepean Sportsplex. Tens of thousands of area healthcare workers are also able to pre-register their COVID-19 shot starting tomorrow. However, no date has been set by Public Health for when this group will start getting the shot. Ottawa police asking for your help locating a missing 73-year-old woman. Christine White was last seen this morning in the area of Stonehill Crescent. Her family is concerned for her safety. White was last seen wearing a light turquoise shirt, dark pants, black running shoes, and carrying a shoulder bag. If you spot her or know of her current whereabouts, you are being asked to call Ottawa police immediately. The town of Smiths Falls preparing for the summer patio season. Similar to last year, the Committee of the Whole sent a recommendation to Council to offer more flexibility on expanding commercial patios. Councillor Peter McKenna is supportive and also suggests making this a permanent fixture.
If I were an owner of a business and wanted to invest in patios, am I doing a slap up, take down, quick and dirty for the summer, or is this something in the long range I can invest in, really put on a beautiful patio and invest the money knowing that this is going to be for me for years to come.
For this year, Council will also discuss waiving administrative and merchandising display fees. I'm Victoria Williston. For News Anytime, you can follow us online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 1011 FM
and 1310 AM.
Our focus now is public education and what the school year will look like in the fall. The Ottawa Catholic School Board is planning for secondary students to go back to full-size classes next fall, 2 semesters. And that's where we will begin our discussion right now with Tom D'Amico, Director of Education, Ottawa Catholic School Board. Good morning.
Good morning. Pleasure to join you.
It's very nice to hear from you, Mr. D'Amico. The Ottawa Catholic School Board planning secondary students back to school full-time, full-size classes in the fall, 2 semesters. Why?
Well, that's our end goal. It's difficult to try and predict right now what the fall will look like. So we do know we have to be prepared for multiple scenarios again next year. But the scenario you just described is the end goal that we do believe we will reach at some point next year, whether that's to start the school year or post-Christmas. We'll have to wait and see, and we'll take direction from the Ministry of Education.
So if there was fine print, it would say subject to change. Fair enough.
Yes, pandemic. So we really need to wait and find out what's happening with vaccination. We need to look at what's happening in our community, and based on that, we'll take the advice of Ottawa Public Health, as we have all year, and we'll put in place the best supports we can for our students next year.
Okay. What are some of the other scenarios that you're looking at?
Well, if you're speaking of secondary, we really have to be prepared for 4 scenarios, depending on the final direction we receive from the ministry. So the one that everyone's become well-versed in this year is semestering versus quadmestering. A year ago, no one knew what quadmestering was. So taking 2 courses at a time or taking 4 courses need to make. From a pandemic perspective, 2 courses will minimize the mixing of students. It limits them to 2 cohorts, whereas 4 courses results in students mixing with up to 4 groups of students. That's a traditional year. So we are planning on a traditional timetable to have students in their 4 periods per semester. If we find in September that the conditions do not allow that, we'll quickly modify that. So we'll have 2 courses in each quadmester for semester 1, with the goal of returning to the 4 courses for semester 2. So that's the first 2 options we have, semester or quadmester.
Okay.
The second one that is a key is last year in July, including all the boards in Ottawa, that we had to open in an adapted model for high school, which meant that half of the students could attend on any one day.
Oh,
so we also have to be prepared for next year for semester and quadmester for both full-size classes in secondary or the adapted model, which would be half-size classes with students at school one day and at home at the second. So those are 4 different models, and we will be prepared with all. And as mentioned, our goal is to have 4 courses each semester for all of our students.
For all of your students?
That's correct.
Not just secondary students?
So that is secondary.
That's secondary students. What about the balance then? The lower grades then, for example?
So for elementary, elementary model this year was not adapted. They had regular school hours,
right,
and they were in their class. And what we did to mitigate the risks of spreading COVID, those strategies obviously worked very well, and we'll continue with this very similar strategies next year, depending on the COVID situation in the fall.
Okay. Now, how challenging is this to have to try and plan for all of these eventualities?
Well,
possible eventualities.
Yeah, you're correct. It is a challenge, but we've learned a lot this past year, and we've certainly seen the resilience of our students. We've seen the support of caring of all of our educators and administrators. So although it is a challenge, it will be much easier next year than it was this year, and we're prepared for any scenario. We've seen that throughout the year. We do know that in-person is the goal that we've set as a board. We do believe that's the best fit for our students, and we think students and their mental health. But at the same time, we've learned this year that the virtual programs do meet the learning needs of some of our students. So that's a positive that came out of the pandemic, and we will offer a virtual school next year for students that learn best in that environment.
Okay. All of this started a year ago, right? All of this started a year ago. The pandemic started about a year ago.
That's correct.
So when you compare to where you were as a school board a year ago as compared to where you were now, what are some of the big differences, do you think, Mr. D'Amico?
Yes, there's some huge differences. I would say some keys that will in that 1-year period. The focus on digital and personalized learning through technology. The Ottawa Catholic School Board was well situated to have technology throughout the board, but we needed to really focus on equity, and that's a lesson that we learned, that we've purchased over 5,000 Chromebooks for students to use at home this year. We had over 400 families that did not have internet access, and we made that a priority. We are paying for internet access for those families so that they can continue to learn.
They had no internet access in the home at all.
That's correct.
Wow.
So when you're moving to remote, and when the government does a shutdown where in-person is not even an option, you really do rely on the internet, and we made sure that was a priority for our board, and it will continue. So that's a lesson learned. A learning management system, while we had one in place, not every educator was using it. Now all of our educators are well versed with our learning management system. We've seen some positive focus on hygiene. So having the we've put in place really have resulted in less students having colds, less students having flus. We want to see that continue when we get post-pandemic, so that focus on hygiene will continue, focus on social emotional learning. So connecting with students has always been a priority, but we've seen the benefits of connecting first, focusing on that well-being of our students and our staff, with a collective focus on well-being, and then the academics will come second.
That's pretty extraordinary. You had to buy 5,000 Chromebooks because this is what is known as the digital divide, and it's really come to light. And there's a socioeconomic digital divide, and there's a geographic digital divide because in parts of small town Canada, rural Canada, internet access is not what it is in the big city. But if you can't afford internet at all, it doesn't really matter. There were times when 400 families in Ottawa were basically cut out of the education system, Mr. D'Amico.
Well,
right?
we moved
or didn't have the appropriate technology that they could access public education.
Yes, so, you're correct, Rob, but we moved very quickly on that. So this was back last March, where we worked with our partners. We at long-term solutions where we can continue to support families in need. We are working on some new projects for next year, but that was highlighted very early, and we're fortunate here in Ottawa that the far majority do have connectivity, so it's not just the finances. The infrastructure and broadband is excellent in Ottawa. Northern Ontario do not have that ability, and they are looking at other solutions, and we know that's a priority for the ministry and for the federal government to look at a broadband strategy for this country and this province.
How do you think children are doing academically? Is this going to be a lost year for many?
Yeah, I would certainly take a different approach, that it's not a lost year at all. When you look at learning, it's not a matter of what's the gap in the learning expectations. It's what have they gained through this experience. And our students will be more resilient coming out of the pandemic. Certainly they've missed the social connections from friends, and is important to their mental health and well-being. But academically, we've continued to set high standards, high rigor, both online and in person, and we'll continue to do that focus. So from year to year, you always have students that progress from grade to grade that have different skill sets. And our educators are skilled at identifying where those gaps exist and providing support. So I'm really not all that worried about any learning gaps. I would take a different approach and say it's the mental health that really needed to be the focus, and that's what we're going to benefit moving post-pandemic.
Okay. What about the situation with your staff, your teachers, and they're holding up at this point of the school year, do you think?
It's been extremely difficult for our educators, our administrators, the constant changes because of the pandemic, the fear of going into work and not knowing if you or yourself are going to get ill and your families. And I would say the most difficult time period for our educators were when they were forced to work from home, where no one could go into school. Many of them had young children at home, and they were trying to balance teaching during the day, supporting their own children online, the same challenges many of our parents had with their work environments. So it has been an extremely difficult year, and I'm very proud of all of the educators and staff. They've raised to the challenge, and they are providing support to our students, and they're meeting with success. But it would be inappropriate to say that it's been smooth sailing. It is not. It has been a constant challenge, and thanks to their resilience and their hard work and creativity, they found solutions. In our particular school board in Ottawa Catholic, we have 3 strategic commitments: be community, be well, and be innovative. And that's exactly what we've seen throughout this pandemic. They've been community to one another, supporting colleagues that when they're having a down day or a down time and need support, they've been there for one another, focusing on being well, for caring for staff and for their students, and really being innovative. Learning board, which talks about global competencies and different ways of learning, and that's really helped us during the pandemic as well.
Mr. D'Amico, thank you for your time this morning.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Stay safe and healthy.
You too. Tom D'Amico is the Director of Education for the Ottawa Catholic School Board. Coming up, Brett Reynolds, the Associate Director of Education for the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, here on City News.
I'm blessed to be married to someone who is a scientist and spent a lot of time following what was happening over in China ahead of time. So he did give us the heads up that this was coming. Not that we believed him right off the bat, but when it did happen very, very quickly, we were prepared. We had hand sanitizer and we were set up to not close our doors. So we locked the kitchen down at Wellington Street, but we left this kitchen open. We put in protocols immediately. We only allowed our very small crew of 4 or 5 people in at the time. No deliveries were allowed to come in or out of the building without, they just weren't allowed in and out of the building. So we met them at the loading dock and had very strict protocols in place right away. We had masks and hand sanitizer and the whole. Very lucky from that perspective, and we're able to, learn as we went as far as doing small, individually packed caterings, the frozen soup program, food for the Ottawa mission. So we didn't have to close the kitchen and then learn how to reopen it. We just were able to shift as we needed to. Because of our partnership with the Ottawa Mission, we were able to very quickly help support them. They were able to send us some product and some supplies, so it wasn't a burden on our business, and we were able to supply the staffing and the packaging to help produce when they needed it the most. And we produced about 1,400 meals a week to complement their meals, and we started our soup program right away. We realized very quickly that there was a need in the community to get together and all work together, not only to support local, but also just to support all the people that were suddenly in a position of, being locked down and not being able to get out. So by starting that soup program, our community, our clients got online and started making donations for the soups, and we were able to produce the soups and get them back out to people that needed it. We're right now currently making 150 liters of soup per week, but we've made, I would say, 5,000 or 6,000, easily since the pandemic. Probably more. I'd have to do the math, but lots. I think everybody in the city has to be very aware of how blessed we were to have great weather this summer and people were able to get out and about, and that's going to shift. So we do have to be much more aware of who our most vulnerable is, and I really think we have to work together as groups. There are so many organizations in the city that are doing something and contributing and working together, and I think it doesn't matter who, but see what you can do to just step up and help them, whatever it is, whether it's driving or delivering food, or someone has extra zucchini in their garden, or if they can afford to donate some money to any of these organizations. I just think we all have to work together. We're smarter and wiser than we were the first time.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Our focus on what school could look like in the fall. The Ottawa Carleton District School Board has told students to expect to begin school this fall with the adapted schedule. And for more on this, we're joined by Brett Reynolds. Brett Reynolds is the Associate Director of Education, Ottawa Carleton District School Board. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure, sir. Thank you for taking the time. Why the adapted schedule?
Well, that's the schedule that we're currently in.
Okay.
As you're aware, as everyone's aware, we're still very much dealing with this pandemic. We most recently came out of a closure. We're not worried about variants of concern. So, we're taking the cautious approach and assuming that there will still be COVID-19 in our community come September. Although we're hopeful and optimistic that vaccination plans will begin to have an impact on that. But, we are of the opinion that, letting our staff, our students, our parents kind of wrap their mind around and prepare for, conditions in schools being much like they are now. And then, if things improve and we get different guidance from the ministry or different guidance from Ottawa Public Health, we'll start to pull back some of those restrictions and safety measures as we can reasonably do so and hopefully begin to return to, quote unquote, normal.
Normal, yeah. Normal being that, in school, 2 semesters, right?
Yeah. If we start at the year in, and I think, all listeners who have experience with education now will know about quadmestering, which is dividing the year up into 4 instead of 2. If we start the year off, if we have to start the year off in quadmestering, then we'll have to stick with it for the first semester. But then by the mid-year, hopefully we could revert back to, a full semester for the second half of the year. We'll just have to wait and see a little bit what circumstances dictate.
Okay. What sort of decision-making authority does the board have? What rests with the Ministry of Education? And what is decided by health officials, either provincially or locally?
Mm-hmm. So, in these circumstances, in the pandemic context, the Ministry of Education, did issue opening guidelines, which, they're guidelines, but they're pretty much seen, I think, as a policy position around, what elementary and secondary school would look like this year. I don't know. We don't know if they're going to continue with that practice heading into next year. We hope to hear from them fairly shortly on that. But they indicate that their plans, their guidance documents are, heavily influenced by, the Ministry of Health and the Chief Medical Officer. And so, the medical community influences the ministry. The ministry sets out direction for the boards, and then the boards make decisions within that guidance while working with our local health authorities to make sure that we're, there's a fair bit of flexibility in there sometimes to, adapt or tailor local models to whatever the needs are in our particular community.
Okay. One of the words that we've become accustomed to hearing over the last year is pivot. Whether it's being in business or any kind of workplace or whatever the case might be, everybody's had to do some kind of pivoting over the last year. How do you think the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, how adept has it become at pivoting when circumstances changed? Because they have.
Well, we're a lot better at it than we were a year ago.
Right.
We've had some opportunities to practice. This was all new. And I really can't commend and applaud enough what our staff and our parents and students have had to adapt to and change with in order to be able to do that pivoting. We've seen it happen a couple of times where it's been the whole system or all the systems in the city moving to remote for a period, but we still have it happening at individual school levels where, say, there's a class closure because of COVID-19, and then that individual teacher or teachers pivot to and students pivot to learning remotely. We've gained a lot of experience with, and that, again, I'm last March, this time last year, if you said this was going to be the reality and that you needed to move the whole system over to, online learning, I just, I really couldn't have foreseen how well people would manage it.
Yeah. What do you think has been learned about online school in the last year? Its pros and its cons. What do you think some of those are?
So, certainly there's some advantages to it, certainly. For some learners, particularly some of our secondary school students, it can work quite well, depending on their learning style. I think it's harder generally at the elementary levels. Obviously, we can imagine how, a kindergarten or grade 1 or grade 2 student, spending their day really learning largely through the screen or through some interactive activities with their parents. It's not at all the same, in terms of the richness of experience that you get in learners. Our staff has certainly increased their skill at figuring out how to keep students engaged and interested in online learning materials.
Yeah.
But what we've, on the other side, I think what we've learned, from a well-being perspective, both of students and staff and probably of parents, in-person learning, being in school is really important for so many of our students, and we're expecting to see, hoping to see a lot of uptake on that for September.
Okay. What about the, we just talked with your colleague from the Catholic School Board about things like laptop computers, Chromebooks, even cover, in the case of that board, the costs of broadband internet because there's some families no internet in the home. What was the circumstance from that point of view, that kind of the technical Can you give us an idea what that was like over the last year?
Yeah, sure. Certainly, heading out of March of last year, and as we began to transition into remote learning, it is an issue still, but it certainly was an issue then. We had a lot of devices. We used primarily Chromebooks in our schools, and so we were able to take those out of the buildings and issue those to families who were in need, and in some cases also provide, mobile hotspots so that they could have connectivity.
Okay.
But, as kids and staff have returned into the buildings, the majority of our students are learning in school, so they've needed devices back to support that kind of learning happening in the building. So we've acquired a whole lot more, thousands of devices more than we had. But as a lot of people are aware, supplies were short last spring, right? As everyone was scrambling to acquire these things. But it's stabilized a little bit. Our supply chain, from what I understand, is certainly doing much better. We're getting those devices, and we've been able to connect the families that need help in being connected.
Okay. Right now, my producer tells me June 22nd, Ottawa Carleton District School Board secondary students, that's supposed to be the last day of school, June 22nd of this year, June 25th for elementary students. Do you think that is still going to be the last day of school?
I hope so. That is what everyone is expecting. We haven't heard any indication from the ministry that they're thinking of altering the school year in terms of start and end dates. Obviously, the start date's already come and gone. So that's what we're working with. If we hear otherwise, that we'll obviously have to adjust to that. But at this point, we have no reason to believe that classes will not end on June 22nd for secondary students and the 25th for elementary.
Okay. Because I'll tell you, if I was 12 years old, I'd be pretty hopping mad if somebody delayed grading day for me.
Yeah, and I know that people have already had to swing with the March break being bumped off to. I wouldn't. Yeah,
March break was already in April. No way you're taking grading day away from me. Okay, look, Mr. Reynolds, I thank you for your time this morning, sir.
Oh, anytime.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Brett Reynolds is the Associate Director of Education at the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. Back right after the news. From there to Ottawa's largest school board, from Ottawa's largest school board to Ottawa's largest healthcare provider, the CEO of the Ottawa Hospital on 1 year of COVID. After the news on City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning. It is March the 9th. It's also Tuesday. I'm Sarah Buchan. Good afternoon. Good morning, I should say. And it's a cloudy day with some warm temperatures. So +4 in Ottawa. It's +5 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news right now. An update from Ottawa Police on that missing senior we told you about earlier this hour. Ottawa Police reporting a 73-year-old who was reported missing in Glencairn has been found safe and sound, and thanks everyone for their assistance. A slight dip in COVID-19 cases today in Ontario. The province announcing 1,185 new COVID-19 infections, so 45 of those cases in Ottawa, 3 in Renfrew, 7 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 10 in Eastern Ontario. The province is also reporting 6 new COVID-related deaths. We'll get a full breakdown of numbers from Ottawa Public Health this afternoon. Ottawa residents born in or before 1931 can start scheduling their vaccine appointments. Area healthcare workers, those 90 and older, will be able to get the shot starting Friday at the Nepean Sportsplex. However, this group of healthcare workers only allowed to pre-register. Start date has not been yet determined by Ottawa Public Health for that cohort to get vaccinated. Several countries, including Canada, are looking at the idea of introducing a vaccine passport, a concept been circulating for months as a way to reduce travel restrictions along with the spread of novel coronavirus. While Canada's health minister and other G7 leaders are keen on the idea, World Health Organization thinks otherwise, says it will emphasize inequality between nations. Looking for news anytime? Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Cameron Love is the CEO of the Ottawa Hospital. He's back on the Rob Snow Show this morning here on City News. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
What a year.
Yeah, quite a year.
Yeah, incredible. So on Thursday is officially the 1-year anniversary of the declaration of the pandemic by the World Health Organization. It was also the day in Ottawa, the first case of COVID-19. So this a year ago would have been a couple of days just before all of that hit the news. What were you doing?
Well, we had started preparation because, with what was coming out of, in particular, New York, we had started preparations for the pandemic arriving in Canada and Ontario. So a lot of work had started through sort of the tail end of February, getting ready to respond to creating ventilator capacity, getting PPE and those types of things in place, and preparing for surges of high volumes of COVID activity. And so by the time the first case arrived on March 11th, we had pretty much been under sort of 2 to 3 weeks of sort of emergency preparedness planning for the pandemic.
Okay. I was on the radio and we were reading these terrible accounts of what was happening in Italy, where it seemed that the healthcare system in Italy, which is a public universal healthcare system, not unlike the Canadian healthcare system, had been completely overwhelmed, and doctors were in this unenviable position of having to make these decisions, life and death decisions about this person is going to get a ventilator. How close did we come to that here in Ottawa? Did we ever approach that level of crisis at the Ottawa Hospital?
No, thankfully not. And you're right, Rob. When we, as March 11th hit, we had huge concerns that what had happened in both Italy and in New York, because New York had a very similar challenge. Okay. And we had ramped up where we could, literally ventilate a couple hundred people and had plans in place to do that. We had, at that time, we were scaling down elective activity based on the province's directions to be fully prepared for that. And through the course of sort of March, April, May, which was kind of that first wave of really responding, we did not have thankfully anywhere near that pressure that we saw in both New York and Italy. And so we had, we did have cases where we had COVID in ICU, but, we were highs of 10 to 15, and we had, highs of a total of maybe 30 to 40 COVID patients. So very, very manageable from the perspective of the volume we had coming in versus how prepared we were.
And 1 year later, how would you characterize the COVID situation at the Ottawa hospital right now, Mr. Love?
So we're stable. Through this entire pandemic the last year, which has been a very challenging period of time, we've always had surge capacity. We've always fluctuated somewhere between 20 and 40 COVID cases. We've had COVID units. After the first wave, particularly with what we saw in long-term care, we had stabilized a lot of our supplies and so as we've come through into December in the last lockdown, as we worked through January, we still, we had concerns in the second wave that we'd have a similar effect to what we saw in Toronto. But thankfully, again, Ottawa responded. And I think a large part of this is, as a community, how people have really tried to follow rules and direct masking and social distancing and the public health rules, which makes a huge difference in terms of the pressure that we get in hospitals.
But right now, you would say the situation is stable.
At the moment, yeah. So we have about, on average, in the last few weeks, we've had somewhere between, 15 and 25 COVID positive patients, and in a facility that's got 1,100 beds, and we've got designated units. The COVID situation is stable. We do have lots of pressure in terms of volume, but that is not that different from what we've seen in previous winters.
Well, that's a Canadian hospital.
Correct. Yeah. So that's true. And right. So we're managing well, but I think, as we all collectively see this ray of hope of working through the vaccines, we still have to be sort of vigilant around the practices that we've done for the last year, and albeit a long haul. But as we work towards the summer, hopefully we start to see more and more vaccinated, and we start coming out of the reds and the orange categories into green, and we start to see our volumes drop in terms of COVID altogether.
What is the at the Ottawa hospital for COVID-19 patients, beds and ICU?
So if we don't do anything with respect to access to service, like we did the first wave, as you recall, we had closed down elective surgery to create capacity. If we leave all of that in place, we have basically per site, one at the Civic and one in General, that are designated for COVID positive patients, and we have upwards of about 30 to 35 ICU beds, one at the Civic and one at the General. And so, if we have to, getting into the range of 10 to 15 to 20 COVID positive patients, it creates significant pressure, but it is something that we've got capacity for. As we start to breach beyond that, let's say we had 80 or 90 or 100 or 150 COVID patients like we saw in Toronto, then you have to start to put measures in place to reduce some of the access to create more bed capacity. But thankfully, we have been not near that at all.
Okay. How would you describe with supplies, PPE, ventilators, these kinds of?
Far more stable than what we saw at the beginning. That was probably one of the biggest concerns at the beginning last year, when around the March 11th date, was did we as a province, as a country, have enough PPE? And I think there was definitely worldwide pressure and shortages for obvious reasons. Yeah. But after about 3 months, we saw a lot of the supply chain systems restore. So for most of our PPE, we have 3-4 months of stock on hand, and then there's pandemic supply stocks that exist with the province. So we are in a good, stable state.
How many people work at the hospital? How many staff do you have there?
Between staff, physicians, residents, learners, volunteers, we'd be somewhere around 15 to 16,000.
15 to 16,000. How many do you think would need to be vaccinated? Eventually all of them, but say sooner rather than later. How many need to be?
I think when you break that down, you've got to break that down a little bit. So when you take the areas that are of highest risk, so you take our emerge departments, the ORs, obstetrics units, ICUs, all those types of areas, our COVID units, there's, you'd want to see 90+% of people vaccinated. Down to our departments such as finance and HR, where we actually have a lot of people working from home. Yeah. We want to see them vaccinated over time, but they're not, as per the provincial guidelines, they're not in the high-risk categories like the first grouping. So we've seen a lot of very positive results in terms of those areas that I spoke to, where people are want to be vaccinated. So we are seeing 90+% in many programs that have been vaccinated.
How many have been vaccinated, would you say, of the ones who you would be a priority for you?
Yeah, so of patient-facing staff, those would be the priority. We're somewhere in the range of 11,500, and we've seen a large majority of them through. Some depends on when they started. So,
Okay.
because we started this December 15th, the categories of groups like Emerge and ICU, just based on calendar time, they're through 2 doses. The ones that may have been done in the last 2-3 weeks, obviously they've only had 1 dose.
Okay. I want to ask you about something else. COVID has disrupted so much of the normal operation of a big acute care hospital like the Ottawa Hospital, multiple campuses, where wait times for things like diagnostic procedures and specialty clinics, surgeries, whatever the case might be, are the norm anyway. Over the last year, how bad has that backlog become over the last year?
So we're catching up, but it still is of concern.
Okay.
So when we, going back again to March 11th, when you take those first 3-4 months with the concern of being prepared as a province and closing down, in essence, elective activity or scheduled activity, so between surgical cases, MRIs, CTs, endoscopies, those types of things, we were more or less slowed down or in some cases closed for 3 months to create that capacity. The amount, we do about 50,000 procedures a year in the OR. So when you close for 3 months, you start to get quite a backlog. So what we've seen is over the course of the last 6-7 months, we've been able to resume and ramp up beyond our previous volumes. So we are catching back up. And so, while we have somewhere in the procedures, depending on the service, we're doing 105, 110% of previous run rate activity, and depending on the service, based on a risk assessment, we're catching up month by month. So over the course of the next, let's say, 4 months to a year, we will catch up. As long as we keep on the same run rate, we will catch up on the backlog and restore back to pre-pandemic.
And the backlog, you figure, is about 15,000 procedures?
Yeah. And
15,000. Okay.
Yeah, and so I think that the important thing is that our medical leadership makes sure that those that are highest risk there is no wait time. So if you take a patient that unfortunately has cancer, then they are to get through, because the risk of them unfortunately either having some type of morbidity issue or mortality is obviously greater than a patient with a surgical procedure that is less critical. So procedures such as cataracts, we do about 10,000 cataracts a year. So it's a high volume, lower risk. Having said that, that's the area where we're trying to do about we can catch back up over the next 4 to 6 months.
Yeah. And how do you do that? Do you do them at night, off hours? How do you catch up on something like that?
Yeah, and the team, the perioperative or the surgical team has been absolutely tremendous through this entire thing in terms of being very flexible to either open hours in the evenings, weekends. We're doing some partnerships to get more cataract activity through. So people have really banded together and rallied together to try and get any time open whatsoever, so we can get patients through.
Very good. Okay. We've talked a lot about care. What about research? What role has the Ottawa scientific research, this race against time? Let's fight this COVID-19 with the best brains in Ottawa. Can you speak to that, Mr. Love?
Yeah, for sure. So, part of our overall mandate and focus is not only clinical care, but very much a significant prominence within this region and within the country on research. And the reality is, in the simplest form, if it wasn't for research, we wouldn't have a vaccine. And so when you look at what's occurred over the last year, we've had great support from our community in terms of providing various philanthropic donations to support research in COVID. So we've had all sorts of trials around treatments, mental health impacts, all sorts of research trials. And so those are things we've always done, but there is a whole bunch of research and literature that is going to be coming out, I suspect, over the next year to 2 years on various findings associated with COVID, and it'll change what we do in terms of advancing care, and also sets the stage for other research trials that'll come about. So that is a sort of an ongoing mantra for us in terms of really trying to advance care through research. But I think the piece that is most prominent is what was recently announced in terms of what we're doing with our biotherapeutics manufacturing center. We have we have a trial, we have a capability here. We're the only hospital in Canada that actually has a biotherapeutics manufacturing center that can produce vaccines, not only the production of them, but the science behind it. And so part of what we are working on now is how do we create capacity, because I don't think it'll be another 100 magnitude.
Yep.
How do we create a manufacturing cycle that allows us to continue to evolve and produce vaccines and actually manufacture them in Ontario that allows us to support not only this community but potentially the province. And so I think a lot of what you'll see on a go-forward basis now is a lot of discussion time around, so that we're not relying on either UK or US or wherever we're getting vaccines. How do we create that capacity within Canada?
Okay. One final question for you, Cameron Love, CEO of the Ottawa Hospital. How, if at all, have the events of the last year disrupted the timeline for the construction of a new civic campus for the Ottawa Hospital?
Not at all, Rob. It's a great question. Actually, it's something that's been progressing extremely well. So during this whole period of time, while we've had obviously a real focus on managing COVID as a planning team has continued to progress on the civic development. So we are now into sort of the next stages of planning, and hopefully as we head into the spring here, we'll be actually communicating a lot more around what the next iterations of either designs and directions are, and we're working very closely with the ministry. So we haven't lost a step in terms of the campus development. And the reality is the one of the key pieces that I think has really come out of the pandemic is some of the challenges with healthcare infrastructure across the board, whether it's long-term care homes or hospitals. And so the need is greater than ever to actually build this new site for this community.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And thank you to all your staff over the last year and the tireless effort that they have put into taking care of people from the entire region. Thank you on behalf of all of our listeners.
Great. It was great talking to you today, Rob. Thanks very much.
Cameron Love is the CEO of the Ottawa Hospital. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
It started out with a small outdoor booth in what was called Artist Alley, which is actually the area just outside our store on William Street, where for a couple of years we sold our jewelry directly on the street. And then we slowly evolved to having an indoor location in this building, 55 Barrett Market Square. We then moved to another location in Place de Ville, and then moved back down here on Dalhousie Street at Irrigere in the 90s. And then back into this building again in 2000 as a collection. I do a collection of jewelry called Cirque that's mainly beaded work with a combination of semi-precious and vintage beads. And then she does a hat collection called Fanfreluche that's all cut and sewn hats in a variety of fabrics and for all of the seasons of the year. We've curated and sourced the artisans that we represent in a lot of different ways over the years since it's been, since 1985. Some people come to us since we're known, and other artisans that we represent might recommend that they come and see us. Some people we find at craft shows, or we see their work, somebody wears it in, go and track it down and bring it. And then some people, interestingly, are with us in one medium, and then sometimes they evolve to another. They're all Canadian and mainly local. With the roughly 50 people that we have, I'd say more than half of those are Ottawa guests, are from other cities in Canada, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, etc. If you can afford it, go to a small business and spend some money. It's lovely when you come in and give me a pep talk and tell me how much you love this place and you've been coming here for years. But if you can afford it, please spend some money too, because all the pep talks in the world are not going to pay my rent, which is still full rent even when we're closed. Then secondly, if you can't afford to spend money, follow the businesses that you want to support on social media. Go to their Instagram, go to their Facebook, follow their Twitter, and then retweet, share their Facebook page, like and comment, because if you can't afford to, as many of us can't right now, to do extra expenditures. Doing all of those little things like that will raise the visibility of those small businesses and hopefully for them result in some online or curbside or other business for them.
Strong voice. No Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay. Let's talk about the We Charity scandal again and some of the latest developments there. Michael Barrett is here. He's a Conservative Member of Parliament. Leeds-Grenville-Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes is his riding, and it's great to have you back, Mr. Barrett. Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show.
Thanks for having me on.
So, first of all, initially, the Kielburger brothers declined an invitation to appear before the House of Commons Ethics Committee. What did you think of the declining of the invitation?
Well, it's absolutely unacceptable for, particularly in this case. These gentlemen were first invited on December 1st, and they've been playing games on the date that they would attend up until last week, and they were scheduled to attend per yesterday. And we heard last week that not only would they not attend what they described as a partisan committee, but should we issue summons for them, they would not appear. And these are two Order of Canada recipients openly flouting the legitimacy of Canada's Parliament. Frankly, it was outrageous. And once the summons were issued, we heard that, in fact, they will attend. They will, as long as they can have their lawyer, their legal counsel, legal representative. What do you think of that? Well, they said that they'll attend with their lawyer, and also that they won't answer any questions that the RCMP might ask them. And I find that very odd. My advice to them, it's free as I'm not a lawyer, is that if they tell us the truth, then they have no need to worry about when I would, of course, assume that they would be telling the truth to the RCMP. So if they're just consistent in their answers, there should be no problem in providing fulsome answers to whatever the committee asks. Okay, this is a point that is raised, though, today in the National Post by Guy Giorno, who has a history with the Conservative Party of Canada, of course, and Conservative government. He was former chief of staff to Prime Minister Harper, for crying out loud. Legal advisor to We Charity, and I guess his question in the column is, what do you want to know on the ethics? Say the Canada Revenue Agency or the RCMP can't find out by doing their own investigations. Why do we even have to have these multiple parliamentary investigations? If these investigative authorities, basically law enforcement authorities, think there's something untoward at the We Charity scandal, let them do their business, and if they feel they can make a case, let them make a case. What are you after, Michael Barrett? Well, we don't know that the RCMP or the CRA or the IRS or the FBI or the Privacy Commissioner or et cetera, are actually investigating them. That's the first thing. Second thing that their paid representative offers in their defense in the National Post today is that parliamentary committees don't have a legitimate role in calling witnesses from private companies, which I've got to say is a white-hot take not previously offered by their legal representative when he was, of course, advising a prime minister. So we'll take what's offered in that National Post column with a grain of salt. With respect to our questions, I think that when we have this organization who, for the benefit of your listeners, Prime Minister's family, $500,000. That was denied by them. That was denied by the PMO. And then we found out that those payments happened. Then they were given $500 million taxpayer dollars to administer and would have collected tens of millions of dollars for their troubles. Yes. about the vetting that was done. We have questions about what due diligence was done by the government. So they picked this organization that they say was second to none in a class of their own, and now we're finding out that there are allegations spanning multiple countries about double matching, about alleged donor fraud, about there's all kinds of allegations being made.
Yeah, I think the point is, what does that have to do with Mr. Trudeau, or what does that have to do with the student grant program?
Did he know? Did he know about all of these allegations? Did he instruct the public service to undertake a proper vetting process? We're now seeing a pattern develop, Rob, of a prime minister and his government, which doesn't seem to do a very good job in vetting before they make decisions. And we'll point to their last appointment at Rideau Hall as an example of that. And this was a big decision, $500 million. Also, there are questions about the consistency in the answers that have been provided previously. And so we need to make sure that we have a full understanding of what was known and when it was known and by whom it was known. And if the government didn't see fit to ask questions about the history and the practices and the reputation of an organization that was given a sole-sourced agreement worth $500 million taxpayer dollars, well, I think that speaks to a terrible lack in judgment on the part of Prime Minister Trudeau.
So what do you see ahead in terms of meetings, timelines? What could happen this week?
Well, the summons that was issued by the committee stands, and that is for the gentleman to appear no later than Friday. And so while they have made a request, there are no other meetings of the committee scheduled this week. And so that's a committee decision. That's a binding summons that was issued. And so my expectation is, barring some change between now and Friday, will be that they appear on Friday, and we'll see what they have to say.
Okay. Thank you again for your time this morning, Mr. Barrett.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Nice to hear from you. Michael Barrett is the Conservative Member of Parliament. His riding is Leeds-Grenville-Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes. He is the ethics critic for the official. Could be some fireworks. See what happens. That's it for the Rob Snow Show. The Mark Sutcliffe Show is coming up right after the noon news. We're back tomorrow, 9 o'clock. Here on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays 9 to noon.